Welcome to the Digital Marketing Insights podcast, brought to you by Brightside Digital.
Hi everyone, welcome to the show. I'm delighted to say we have Eric today, who's a senior digital learning consultant. Eric, how are you doing?
I'm very good, thank you very much.
And Eric, can we start off by you telling us a little bit about yourself and your career to date, please?
Sure. I was born in France and I came to Ireland in 1995 as a work experience. In France, my education wasn't that exciting, normal schooling, and I realized that I was looking for some different ways of learning. I wasn't necessarily fit for the standard school architecture, school process, as much as the process wasn't really right for me. So at 15, I went onto some kind of boarding school and I learned how to make furniture out of planks of wood in a traditional way with hand tools and things like that. And I realized that I really enjoyed the creative process and the academic part of it. I was kind of okay with it. So I took a chance and kept going and did some kind of living cert in industrial production. So there was mostly what we would call now flat pack design, programming machines. So still using a creative process, but much more technical in a certain way. And it included some architecture and interior design and qualified. And I thought, well, if that worked, why not continuing? I'm not necessarily ready to enter the workforce, so let's give it a try. And I kept learning, going from school to school across the country in France, qualified as a construction technician. And so through some European program, there was a work experience in Dublin. So I arrived in Dublin in January 95 with very little English and landed in an office that had no French whatsoever. So I worked for 5 years in an architecture office. And what was interesting was at the time, um, it was a kind of a personal computer revolution in the sense that computers stopped being those huge, massive steel cages boxes on a desk that would run really, really slow. But bit by bit, they got a bit faster. So they bought this computer, desktop computer, with a few pieces of software. At the time, some people might relate to that period. I had 3D Studio and a DOS, which means your toaster has more power than the computer then. But it was really interesting to be able to use some of my digital skills, use some of my design skills, and bring them together through the computer, get a little camera to fly around, and make some animations and things like that. And then they had all those other software on the side to do presentations, to do graphic design and things like that. So in the evenings, I would take the book home, I would read the book, or maybe stay a bit late in the office and try it out. And couple of years later, an opportunity came up to someone was looking for a teacher in evening classes. So it just was a kind of right connection there where I could teach what I just learned. And that's one thing I would recommend to anyone. If you want to learn something new, try to teach it to someone else because you really need then, you get that motivation, you get that drive to stay on top of things, slightly ahead of whatever person or class that you're teaching, and really gives you an extra motivation to know a bit more and those questions that you're going to get in that kind of classroom, let's say, uh, is really interesting because you could get other people's perspective, and that really opens up a whole range of things you never thought about. So learning best is by teaching, really. And in 2000, I started my own business, and I thought I'd do great in some web design because I realized very quickly as well that as soon as you design something for print, as lovely as it is, you send it out, it gets printed, and as soon as it's printed, it's out of date. And that web thing, now you have to remember at the time, the industry standard was a 33K modem, the ones that now you would find in some movies, maybe, the very loud one, none of that broadband business. So web design was in its infancy. And I thought that was absolutely amazing because design wise, it was not as exciting, to be honest, what was possible. But this ability to always have fresh content to share with people and vice versa to read from people, I thought that was absolutely fantastic. And very quickly, of course, a Flash came on the scene, and that to me kind of went a bit crazy. And I was busy with 3D design and lecturing actually, which was really, really good. So I only lectured in what I learned. And that was that for the past, about 15 odd years. And then I decided to get, to challenge myself and to get maybe into better places. I went for a degree in Irish University, and more recently a master's in e-learning, just to kind of solidify the foundations of what I knew and kind of find all the gaps, all those interesting things that I didn't study or didn't really work. So now I'm in a position where I'm embedding myself in a team and in a company. I've become nearly one of their employee, if you want. And together we plan, we design, we develop, and we create some training solutions that ideally will solve many issues. The issues for the companies, the issues for the managers, and the issues for the employees. And I'm relying, of course, on learning theories, on different models, technologies, a lot of course, through digital, to be honest. But, if the best answer is a face-to-face classroom, it's less and less, to be honest. But sometimes it is needed to have that human contact. But it's moving away from, look, you want a course, I build a course, I put the course in the system, off you go, problem solved. It's more now a combination of different technologies, different resources. And I have no problem admitting I have the best job in the world because I've been to places that, people can't. I've talked to amazing people in production. I've learned a lot about ore processing in Quebec. I've learned a lot of global scale manufacturing of washing powder, uh, uh, compliance training, so many different subjects completely removed from one another, but they all come with their own challenge, their own. I wouldn't say secret because I don't go that far in their process, in the sense that I don't get the secret recipe of what they do, but seeing how they work. And there are places, I have to say, I really kind of regretted leaving because, well, the project was finished, it was time to roll out, but we had it's such a great time and benefited from each other's. That was fantastic. And it's not always easy. I mean, when you plan strategies, you plan budgets, you plan resources, you look at the success factors. We need to generate great ideas that really work usually for the learners, um, to achieve a certain goal. It People have different ideas because as long as you work with people or for people, you, they're going to have different needs, different backgrounds. And that's something online sometimes I get a bit frustrated about because you have those great theories, for example, color theories on red means this, and blue induces that mood. But that's looking at in your own culture, because if you look at the same idea or the same language sometimes, um, the same wording across a whole spectrum of different cultures around the world, it's going to impact people very differently because they don't have that same history, their own background, their own culture. So it's a question of connecting all of this together. So it paints a very, very big picture. And we look at closing the gaps, of course, and different teams have different needs. And that's why making a single course that is the same for everyone, quite often, I mean, more and more, it's not going to work, to be honest. Now, it depends on the budget, of course. I've met, yes, as I was saying, subject matter experts in vaccine manufacturing, financial systems, or processing, humanitarian aid deployment. And that kind of expertise, that kind of passion they had, and they shared is nicely. It was, I have to say, a fantastic experience. So yes, as I was saying, I have the best job. I get to learn so much from new people. I end up writing content that's creating stories, characters, different personas. I do some graphic design, some web design, uh, connecting different systems together. And then I get to be really creative with some animation, some audio and video editing, recording. I do end up working more recently, of course, with 3D embedded with some AR, VR kind of solution. Again, that's another budget altogether. I work with learning platforms. So those are learning management systems that deploy the course, make it accessible. But it's interesting to see as well the reporting that the managers get. The most basic ones in who did the course, who didn't do the course, who passed the exam, who failed the exam. Um, but more and more, there's that whole learning pattern that has been analyzed on trying to see from that data analytics, understanding, okay, why did this person spend 8 minutes watching a video that lasts only 30 seconds or 45 minutes on this page? So clearly someone went off for a cup of coffee and then came back, but so maybe we need to put a break at some point in this course, or tell them, look, you've been learning for 20 minutes, go for a cup of tea, why not? uh, I was playing a game, I know, 1800, and if you play for too long, it says, oh, you've been playing for 2 hours, why not take a break and go for a cup of tea? And it's interesting how, there's that care of the users. So
Yeah, that's really good.
working with systems is not just that mechanics of I need to sell a course that is internal or external, and did I make my target or whatever it is. It's also all those learning patterns that are really interesting. And then designing those curriculums, designing those learning journeys, which means it goes beyond that just one course. It's that, okay, this year, it's not even in time actually, but to reach our goal, you're going to need to read some document, you need to have to reflect, you need to learn from some videos, from some interactive, um, seeing, maybe we could have a question and answer session online using whatever video technology, video conferencing technology. So, and one I like a lot as well is that internal blog where people put up articles as a way to, how to connect one of the big screen to your laptop, kind of how to's, but as well how to do something, how to learn something, how this is how we do things in here. This, and people could contribute and learn at the same time. And it's that peer learning using technology, which I find really, really interesting nowadays, using all that digital thing. And as well, I mean, to relate to a lot of the guests that you had on the marketing, this role of internal marketing is really important. Um, because you need to sell it to your team, to your colleagues, to your employees. Because the last thing we want is to go back to a school mentality where, look, you have to do this course. And because we called it a course, because it's mandatory, because it's between this time and that time, or you have to do it before the end of the month, all those conditions become a bit of an obstacle. So having a marketing team that sell the course internally with kind of points of motivation, having a senior person in a company appearing on a video saying, I just finished this course, it's really interesting, I've learned a lot, or get them to participate in a course in some way. means, okay, it's not just for us, it's for all levels, and it makes it more accessible. And it means for me, I have access to even more people talking about really crazy ideas. And it's really interesting.
And Eric, what would you see as your main strength in digital now?
I think it's a mix of active listening and visualization. So I find that a few times, I mean, I have a story. It goes back a few years now for a large pharma company. I met them and they wanted signs placed at the entrance of every meeting room. And they were describing what they wanted because internally they ran a competition to see how should we name our meeting rooms. And then they came up with name of famous scientists throughout history. And it'd be great if we did a bit of this, and someone said a bit of that. And so I said very little during that meeting, and I just took notes. And then a week later, I said, look, this is what we should be doing. We should have, the portrait of that famous scientist cut out in a kind of a clear plastic or thick clear glass on little studs, maybe with a name, with your branding in it, but as well a few words of what they did and all the ideas that actually they mentioned. Well, most of them anyway. And they couldn't believe how great of an idea it was. And they were so surprised, going, "Oh my God, this is brilliant! This is yeah!" And they never realized that actually that's what they just said. I just took it, massaged it a little bit, and quite often by just that active listening, and it is difficult to, especially doing a podcast, to shut up and say nothing and listen. But in a meeting like this, it's really interesting because once you pass above the standard um, conversations and they start kind of opening up a little bit and you go for a cup of coffee, you're going to hear more ideas or and as long as again it's brought back to, and this is where I facilitate those meetings more than lead or whatever it is. It's more a question of facilitating because sometimes it's just the idea is to ask the right question that's going to get them to, because I know the answer I want to hear or I know what they're trying to say, I think, but I need to ask a few questions to guide them. So it's that active listening that's going to guide the conversation and say, oh, but when you say this, do you mean more this or that? Or and suddenly they're framing, and then sometimes realize, like I don't know, some of you might be old enough to remember when Flash was the big
Platform,
excitement
yeah.
on websites,
Yeah,
and
and it used to be so slow to load. I built a Flash site before back in the day.
yeah, but I don't know about you, but I had clients that said, "Look, I'm doing, I don't know, heaters for the house, but my competitor has a lot of Flash on their website. Can you make me a website that has more Flash in it? Just be the one that has the most." And you kind of go, "Yes, I can. That's the answer to your question, but should I?"
Yeah,
Because and it's true. It offered design possibilities that we didn't have at the time. Now it's completely different. But it was interesting to kind of go, you're not selling Flash here. You're selling to who? Are you selling to the person who's going to fit the heating system in someone's house? Or do you talk to the end user? Who's your target audience here? Because this is not, and it's hard to say to people, this is not about you. This is not about your business. It's about your audience. And in learning, um, the audience could be quite varied, and you and it's difficult to cater for everyone, as I said before. But it's that kind of, yeah. I'd say one of the strengths that I think I have is to be that active listening ability and extract to guide the conversation and extract the essence of what they really want or what they should want. I don't know how that works down.
and for anyone listening, Eric,
Yeah,
like you have incredible experience, and you've touched so many different aspects, especially around the Adobe Creative Cloud
yeah.
nowadays, but back in the day, the different softwares. Um, but how would you recommend someone to learn if they wanted to get into animation, graphic design, and stuff? Where would you tell them to go? And the second part of that question, which is going to be more for general listeners, is how does one get into a creative space that you get to come up with these concepts and designs and different things when you're doing your work?
Uh, Now, there's no easy answer to this one. So for the software, first of all, the software, I mean, okay, I could explain the list of mistakes that I've made, hopefully in the purpose that anybody listening, you wouldn't do those mistakes. The first mistake that I made was to spend a lot of money. At a time in 2000, I spent a fortune on a computer, a fortune on software, because I looked at what was possible to do.
Yeah.
Never realizing really, or I didn't want to realize that actually those marketing images were produced by experts with years of experience and expertise, and I was miles away from that. As good as I was, in a sense, whatever level I had, I didn't spend the last 10 years, developing the software, working with it, and so on and so forth. So the one thing that I would suggest, there are so many areas of digital creativities that it's making pictures, making animations, editing videos, 3D modeling and animation. I would really recommend, as much as I absolutely like Adobe Creative Suite, um, Adobe Articulate Storyline, Adobe Captivate, and all of those inverted commas professional paid for programs, try to find the free one first. If you can't afford Photoshop, and you don't even know if it's for you, try to use GIMP, which is an open source version of it. You have a free video processing software, editing software. Let's say for DaVinci, for example, I think has a version, I could be wrong, but I think DaVinci has a version that is free. I prefer the desktop versions than the online versions. Because I'd like to own my files. But whatever is free for 3D modeling, that's really easy. You have Blender, which seems to do. I'm working only with one aspect of Blender, but I'm learning about the rest as well. You could do animation, you could do modeling, you could do 2D and 3D animation. You want to create a little game or something like that, or kind of even animation, like a cinematic animation. You could use Unity. So all of those software are free. The courses are usually widely available. So, for example, it's Unity that has a lot of those big brands like Blender and Unity have their own academy, as in their own learning system where you create an account and you could progress through the lessons, choosing a certain route. You want to be more of a coder, you want to be more creative, more, I don't know, you could choose what you want to do. So it's start with a free one and see if you're having fun. The other aspect is start to work for someone. The worst client you could ever have is yourself. If you're into designing business cards, for example, you probably will have the worst business cards because you need to find clients to pay your bills. I mean, the more time you spend on someone else's work, the more money you make. If you spend time on your own, you will make money out of it if it's a really good business card and it has an impact and people call you, of course. But all that study time, all that research time and everything, it's time that is not billable. So I think at first, find someone. If, I did it for free in the past. I don't know if it's possible now, but find some real life project. And that's one thing in the classrooms. I remember when I was teaching face to face, something that was absolutely essential to people. It was that real world experience. So now when I create stories, for example, a recent course that we developed, um, instead of teaching compliance, 24 different topics of compliance, money laundering, competition, bribery. I mean, all of those things, 24 topics. The idea was, instead of sending 24 slide decks or 24 little videos of someone telling you, this is what you need to learn. You need to learn this, this, and that. Um, we created a story, and then using actual real events that did happen in the news when a company got fined for bribery or competition, kind of breaking the competition rules, or I wouldn't say spying on each other, but that all those things like that. Um, Use those stories and then follow those people that are those characters, and then you follow them, and you follow that salesperson that goes from building to building, and someone is asking strange questions, or they're asking the wrong questions. By accident, they hear a conversation they shouldn't have heard. All those things are real, and adding that reality. So find someone who doesn't necessarily need something from you, but if you think, oh, I'd love to make cartoon animation, absolutely. Find someone who write a very good story,
Yeah.
or a good story, because you don't want to spend time on that. If you want to focus on animation, focus on the animation. So get someone to help you with the story. Maybe a couple of friends have very good voices to do the voiceover of the characters, if you have characters. I know a couple of friends who could do cool music, better than I could create new music. So why not? Of course, you have sites that will have a royalty-free music to get you started. But really, that's where I would go, kind of give it a go. But it has to be a real project, I think, instead of, oh, I'd like to see if I could do this today. That's not challenging enough, because you're going to stay within your comfort zone. So the only way to learn is to really stretch out to a place where you don't even know if you could do it. You don't know if it's possible to do it. So, and having a client, ideally not a friend, because you don't want a friend that's going to say, yeah, that's great. We won't use it, but that's great. Thank you very much. No, you need someone to say, look, I wanted something better. I need something more this or less that, or that says more in that direction. Okay, well, I could change it, and be challenged that way is really a way to learn and to grow, I think.
Yeah, brilliant. And the second part of that was how people could stay creative. How do you find your creative space and get inspired to do some of your work?
Oh, I, 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 I have two different ways. The first, well, three actually. In a recent video I made, I started with the most boring option possible, just to have something very quick. And it wasn't really polished. And then I looked back and went, okay, if I were on the other side, as in, I'm told this is a new development in my company, and here's the video for it, I'd be very disappointed, and I probably wouldn't hear the end of it. So now I need to strip it and really have all those nice impact key elements that will give me that. So it's that starting big, and then you strip it down to something really impactful. I never go with what is the finished product, and never go for the finished product straight away, because it needs that kind of like sculpting. You need to get there. It is a journey in a certain way. The other one is uh, looking online. I mean, there's so much online. A quick YouTube search um, often will tell me, okay, let's not do that. And it's not because it's bad or whatever it is. Kind of go, okay, if I were to produce something like that on this topic or those keywords, what element actually would bore people, would not do get the result I want or the client wants, and then it kind of strip away all of that again. And okay, well, what really works then at the core is this: talking to people. I find that talking and listening again is that conversation, that it's online, that it's live. Um, we're in Ireland, meeting in the pub around a pint of Guinness, and just trashing out ideas is a fantastic way. And sometimes it's the craziest ideas that I come home with, and I kind of go, okay, that's just too crazy. That the client will go, no, that's too out there. But what really works? What does get me excited about this idea? Let's get to the essence of the excitement there. It's a new tool. It's a new technology that I want to play with. It's a certain concept, it's a certain visual, and then that gives a kind of a pivot point, a kind of a that point of balance that where things could grow out of that, and present the client with a couple of ideas. And usually the one that I don't want them to pick, which is a bit of a gamble because in the past a couple of clients have picked the one that I really don't want them to pick. But I found that sometimes, it's kind of go, look, I had this silly idea, it's not really good. But look at the other one, which is much better. And then they're kind of happier about it. But usually it's not needed because the ones presented actually are quite solid. And I use what they said to back to themselves. I kind of reflect back to, look, when you said this, and that, this is what I heard, and this is what I saw. And here's the course, here's the video, here's the animation, here's I'm hoping to get into game development at some point, um, for learning again.
Yeah.
But it's kind of having those kind of key points listed from what they said and being able to reflect it back. But the creative process is just sketch something, try something, do something crap. Okay, don't delete it. Never delete it. But okay, so that was good. Make a copy of it and refine it. Make a copy of that, rework it, add something, and then you'll get there. And especially at the beginning, it's looking at what other people did, but not the expert. I would recommend for someone to stay away from inverted commas the masters, because you won't catch up on 20 years of expertise, of experience.
Yeah.
So I like the inspiration, and the worst thing you could do is then copy it, which then will be a bad copy of something famous. It could work in some very, like memes. We're all used to memes nowadays, and hey, you never know, your meme might go viral and hit the spot. But really, if it's something that comes from you, I find the creative process, you have to put a little bit of yourself in it, which is painful when it's rejected, because you have to remind yourself, it's my product, that is my idea, that is rejected, not me as a person.
Yeah.
But and you come home saying, look, people didn't like what I did. It's not that they didn't like me. No, there are instances where they didn't like me, so fair enough. There's little I could do about that to some extent. But if they didn't like the idea, that's okay, because I have another couple of ideas that I worked with and maybe abandoned maybe too early or something like that.
And Eric, looking at the digital industry as a whole, is there anything that really excites you that's coming up?
Oh, there's so much. There is so much. But again, is it really useful? So at the moment, I'm working, well, not at the moment. I've been doing for the last few years, work on VR stuff. Again, because the headsets are going down in prices all the time. The software is free, so it's really, really good. Again, learning Unity is difficult, but it's free, and you have videos, and you could use assets to bring in, so you don't have to learn the whole process. If you want to know, can I make a little VR thing within 2 hours? You can. That's really a good thing. With iPhones, you have a LiDAR scanner there where you could do. I worked with virtual twins, so taking a factory floor, for example, and scanning the whole lot, creating some kind of 3D model of it, so you could visit a locked area. For example, I worked a lot in biopharma and pharma in the past few years, where the places where, for example, they create vaccines, you can't go in and visit. It's just not possible. Not out of secrets, but out of fear of contamination.
Yeah.
So having that virtual twin means you're going to walk around, look at things, and share screen with someone that could be on the other side of the planet, and we could communicate about tools, equipment, areas. Oh, it's really, really good. Another thing, the thing is changing things a little bit. It's AI. I think AI, we don't realize the impact it's going to have in the next few years. Now, depending on who you listen to, it's positive or negative. I don't think we're where Skynet is going to take over the world and the Terminators are going to walk the earth. But it is scary. I use a platform called Synthesia. If someone wants to look at it, it's synthesia.io. And it's crazy because you type your text, you choose a person, which is a real person being videoed. And a few minutes later, you get a video of that person in her voice saying what you typed, and the lip syncing is near perfect.
Wow.
Which is scary because I used text to speech software for the past 20 years, or 15 years, let's say. The more recent one, like Speechello, for example, I found a couple of voices, especially with American accents, that American clients thought they were a real person. It takes a bit of tweaking to put a bit of pause, to control the flow of the speech.
Yeah.
But it's near human. You could fool someone. It doesn't feel too robotic anymore. But having that synthesia where you could use a stock character, or even better, and I think it only cost a couple of grand, you could film yourself, like a selfie, film yourself reading very specific text that's going to go through a lot of intonation, a lot of wording, a lot of pause, a lot of spelling and tone and accents and stuff like that. You send them the file, and basically you get your own virtual trainer. I wouldn't say for free, but I recorded subject matter experts and trainers on video, and for they're usually quite good, I have to say, but still, to get a 20-minute video, it's gonna take much more than 20-minute recording and the editing. And we need to get you back in because you said something wrong, or the sound wasn't great, or there's those retakes. It's a bit of a nightmare to get it really nicely. But now it's nearly scary, that kind of reach that AI has to create pictures, create videos. I wouldn't say near perfect because you could often spot, for some reason, image AIs where you say, "Oh, I want my portrait to be drawn in the way Salvador Dali would make a portrait," and then the AI will throw it back. But for some reason, I noticed that the fingers, for example, in some of those AIs, the AIs cannot get fingers for some reason, or the nose, or depending on which one it is, it's consistently failing on one point.
Yeah.
But still, it's just crazy, this ability to say, look, I'm going to a stock image platform of royalty-free images, and I'll never get exactly what I want, as in what I see in my head. But now thinking that they will allow you at some point, if it's already on the way anyway, to say, I would like an image of, I don't know, a room full of equipment doing this, or maybe an office with this kind of setup. And it's going to look at the library of millions of pictures they already have and create the exact image that you want using thousands and thousands of existing photos. So the result will be pretty much photorealistic, as in believable. And you get the exact picture you want, and it's a unique image. Now, how do the contributors of those original pictures get paid? That's a different story. But I think AI will be quite interesting in looking at keyword optimization, looking at website optimization. So I saw an ad the other day on a website that tracks your cursor on the website, so you know what your visitors are not even clicking, but are moving around. And I don't think it could use the webcam to look at the eyes, but because that would be invasion of privacy. But at some point, the AI will be able to deduce or to detect, to understand and estimate, this is the way they read your site. And if you were to do it a little bit more like this, you'll be even more successful. And you're going to end up saying, look, this is my pictures, this is my text, this is my goal, these are my videos, just make me a site, do the whole lot for me, and keep changing it all the time to suit that influx of data analytics that you're reading. And can you trust it then? Can you, it's just that, but I find it absolutely fantastic, this whole opening that we have, that we don't really know where it's going, but it's at the moment doing really, really interesting things.
Yeah, and you've seen all this changes before, Eric. So you're
Absolutely, because as we discussed before, I remember when the internet came up. Just to reassure your audience, I'm not 102. I'm only 50. But I remember the first modems, the first internet, the first websites. Um, that kind of suddenly going from people being worried that books would simply disappear. Um, because why would you need a book if you could get all your stuff on Kindle, for
yeah,
example? I still buy books and I love the touch and feel, and I still haven't made a transition to take notes on my books, virtual books or digital books. But I sometimes I highlight elements and then it kind of summarizes the whole lot. So there's a place for digital, there's a place for analog, if you want to call it like that.
yeah,
But yeah, I wouldn't call it revolution, because I'm really careful with those buzzwords like metaverse. Don't get me started on
I
metaverse.
won't.
But those buzzwords that seem to be like, yes, it is clear that something is happening and it's about to go crazy. It's all that kind of enhancement or creation of digital assets to suit the audience, and then for us, for training, I could see the point where, in a certain way, it's already there. I could see the point where we say, look, these are the goals we want to achieve. Here are the key learning points. Here are the examples of real life stories where it failed, it worked. Whatever you need to learn. Learning is a change of behavior.
Completely. Yeah.
So um, this is when the wrong behavior or the our behavior generated a negative outcome. Here's a behavior that generated a positive outcome. So you feed in all these things, and I could nearly see it happening in a sense that for someone in Asia, because of a different culture than in Europe, than in Eastern Europe, than in Africa, than in Northern America, or wherever else in the world, different cultures, different languages, that whole lesson kind of takes a different twist, because a story of, I don't know, someone driving to work for an hour and a half doesn't apply to everyone in a company across the globe, or even within the same office in Dublin, for example. So maybe those stories could adapt someone taking the bus, because the system knows you're taking the bus to work. So it's the same story, but it's adapted to you. And that's why sometimes I find that games like Assassin's Creed or Zelda, where you control the path of progression, they have a strong storyline. There's an idea of achievement, a bit of fun, and then you could always YouTube the question, or you could always Google the question to get some insights of, look, I'm stuck there. And I think work has changed like that as well, um, on getting those internal blogs or sources of what they call just in time kind of learning, because we're asking, I see it in, especially in offices, we're asking people to do more and more slightly outside of their core employment. For example, someone is a manager, but more and more they're asked to do some reports, to do some analysis, where in the past they might have had someone specialized in making reports, someone specialized in making analysis. Now this person needs to use a different system or different tool, or do something, let's say even once a month. And they keep forgetting how to do it, because it's that on the 30th of the month, I need to go there, click, 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 get the report, and extract some information, pass it on to someone else. Maybe keep that for myself and act on it, whichever it is. But it's only once a month, and you can't expect people to remember all those small things all the time. Now, either, as I was saying, some automation, some kind of system will know you're asking for the same thing every month. So why don't I get it for you, and I'll drop it into your inbox automatically. Or I have this internal curated site um, that's going to give me the answer, and all I need is just right now. I need an answer on how to fix things, how to extract something. Really, it becomes quite interesting. But I could see the time, going back to the original point, where the AI, the system will feed you those things because it knows it's the 30th of the month. By the way, it's the 30th. You need a bit of help getting this or doing that because it's that one task once a month that you seem to be a bit stuck with. So can I help you with this? And it's the same for learning. It's the same for many things.
And Eric, like, listen, I could talk to you all day, but let's finish up with lastly, if you have one personality trait that you could bottle up and pass on to others, our listeners today, what would it be?
There's a certain curiosity, naivety sometimes of a child, and a bit of being stubborn as well. So it's a bit like a child, I guess, um, because I like being the non-predictability that is not predictable. So I'm not making an effort to not be unpredictable. It's not that, but I find that sharing my excitement, my for someone who says, "Look, we're doing this process, we're doing this, and it's quite normal for us," and I'm sharing that passion that for everybody else, it's not the normal thing. It's quite kind of being contagious in that excitement, in that kind of thirst for discovering new things.
Love it, Eric. And Eric, if people want to touch base with you, how can they get in touch?
The easiest is through LinkedIn. Eric Dumas, Dumas. Um, there's not too many of them in Ireland. But yes, the easiest is through LinkedIn, and absolutely get in touch. And especially if you have any questions or shared passions, absolutely. There are many groups that, especially online, meet regularly or can keep talking. So it'll be great to connect with them and yourselves, and kind of continue the conversation.
Love it. You absolute gent, Eric. Thank you so much for being on the show, and thank you everyone for listening.
Thanks very much.